Hey yo, unfortunately this past week, another wrestling legend, a two-time WWE Hall of Famer, a man who, while he was in the wrestling ring, created a ton of great memories, a few bad ones as well, but we're not really going to delve too much into that. But unfortunately, Scott Hall passed away earlier this week. And he left the wrestling world with a memorable legacy, to say the least. Usually on this show, and Wrestling Talk, right here on the YouTube channel, we like to talk about and be excited about wrestling and about everything that transpires on a wrestling screen. But unfortunately, in this case, it's hard not to be sad. It's hard not to reminisce about the man that everybody out there knew as Razor Ramon. The man who changed the wrestling landscape as we knew it when he made his first appearance with WCW. And he was a part of the Outsiders and formed the New World Order. So when all these news started coming out about how Scott Hall had 3 heart attacks and he was on life support, very few people out there wanted to admit it. And the fact of the matter is, Scott Hall left us. So right here on Wrestling Talk right now, we could talk about all these great moments that Scott Hall left with us, but I'm going to talk about my personal experience with Scott Hall. Now, I never met him at all, but I do recall the very first time I saw him on my TV screen, and that was on January 4th, 2010. That was the very first time I saw him live, and I believe he made an appearance with then TNA Impact Wrestling on that infamous, famous show of where Hogan made his debut for TNA. Now, I was excited, first and foremost, to have him appear with TNA because prior to that, I had read up on the NWO, I had read up on the Outsiders, I had watched a few of those clips on YouTube, and I had been all hyped up for another edition of the Monday Night Wars, or at least I was ready for the competition, in this case TNA, to build up to that moment. So when he appeared, I obviously marked out, with Hogan, with Sean Waltman, with Kevin Nash, with Eric Bischoff. WCW itself was right there in TNA. And in my view, that was the first step into getting TNA to compete with WWE. And a lot of the IWC out there started to comment on the fact that they were all past their prime. That it just wasn't the same. And then Hogan brought Bubba the Love Sponge and the Nasty Boys into the company, along with many others that were past their prime. And for the first few months, I was just ecstatic. These guys are legends. These guys were a part of the biggest wrestling period of all time. The most exciting wrestling period of all time. So I was completely there. Then I saw these guys wrestle, and unfortunately, that's a fact. They were past their prime. And Scott Hall had demons. Nobody can deny that. Nobody can not look elsewhere and pinpoint when he had these demons. He left WWE in the plane ride from hell. Many regard Scott Hall to be the greatest WWE superstar to never win the WWE Championship at any point in his career. As a matter of fact, many regard him to be one of the greatest to never win a world championship. in a major promotion. He was never WWE champion. He was never WCW or TNA champion. And unfortunately, we have to credit that to his demons, which unfortunately took up most of his career, took up most of the latter part of his life, and he got his act together thanks to DDP, which allowed him to enjoy the Hall of Fame induction alive. So we have to be thankful for that. Other than Scott Hall, my personal experience watching him on TV, watching him on TNA, watching his ladder match at WrestleMania 10 against Shawn Michaels. I've only watched that match once. And I can understand why these two men, Shawn Michaels and Scott Hall, made the ladder match a staple of professional wrestling for years and years, for decades after the fact. So, all I can say is, unfortunately, death is a natural part of life. They all leave us, some sooner rather than later, and it's never a great time for that to happen. But Scott Hall was the very first superstar, the very first wrestler, the very first man that allowed fans to cheer for the bad guy. Scott Hall was the very first bad guy that was cool and that we wanted to cheer. So if he left us with that legacy alone, and I'm not saying he did, he left a lot with him as well. Scott Hall, thank you for the memories. And I'm not even going to try and do a bad Razor Ramon impression because it's not really good. So, to all the wrestling fans out there, to Scott Hall's family, my dearest condolences. And much like everyone out there, Scott Hall, I'll see you down the road.